Welcome to our little session here about beer. We're here with Paul Werndly. Paul is going to talk to us about some of the beer facts and beer concepts. So, Paul, maybe you can start off and just tell us, what's beer?
Well, I'm a health food chef and a herbalist, so basically studied food as medicine and educator. So I wanted to talk about what is beer, but also the healthy aspects of drinking beer and how drinking beer can be healthy for you if it's done in a mature and responsible way. So beer is basically malted barley, which is a starch sugar element, usually barley, added with water and hops. This is hops here. It's a medicinal herb, okay? Hops is added with water and barley and then boiled. It's boiled to make it's called a wort. Then the yeast is added. Now the yeast reacts with the starch or the sugars in the barley, and there's a wheat beer, and even some brewers add sugar with the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is a yeast species. Now that yeast species then turns to starch, which is acting as a sugar. The yeast metabolizes that into alcohol or ethanol. Okay? Now what's released there, which is also released in champagne, is CO2, carbon dioxide. And that's actually the bubbles in champagne and beer. So beer is basically grains mash, water, hops, or Hopfen in German, then turned, which metabolizes into alcohol in a controlled natural brewing way.
Okay. Beers come in, a lot of flavors these days.
Yes.
We've got chilies, bananas, the endless. Maybe you can just explain to us that concept.
Yes, well, there's a lot of flavors of beers. There's a lot of craft beers coming out, and the principles in beer, especially like the bitter principles, come from hops. There's about 100 different varieties of hops now in the world. Hops is a flower from a flowering vine. The female flowers. There's a male and female Hopfen. And also in Australia, there's a indigenous native hops, which has not been used yet in beer. That's been used by the Aboriginals for 80,000 years. That's the indigenous hops. It has the same effect. Hops has the same effect as calming to the central nervous system and relaxing. It can even be used for insomnia. And I think sometimes that's where men have a hard day's work and they just really love a beer, because that calming, relaxing, soothing effect of the hops. But hops also provides that bitter principle. Now the bitter principle we can make a whole other video on. That's a herbal principle that stimulates the bitter flavour in the tongue, which stimulates the vagus nerve, which stimulates digestive. So you can actually use beer as a digestive. It stimulates stomach acid, bile, enzymes, and it actually strengthens digestion. So that's the bitter principle in hops. I've got a whole pharmacopoeia here on hops, how they're used, how they're harvested. The bitter principle in hops is actually humalones, isomhumalones in hops. Now some hops have a really strong bitter principle, others have a stronger aroma. So where the aroma comes from the hops is that fruitiness. Some beers have that fruity hops. So hops have a high aroma, low bitterness, or a high bitter principles, low aroma. So a brewer can actually play with those flavours. Other flavours in beer are also the metabolites of yeast. So when the yeast are acting on the mash, on the barley mash, they're actually converting that into alcohol, giving off CO2. But they also give off other compounds like citric acid and malic acid, or even lactic acid is in a sort of more of a milky flavour, given off in the beer. And the alcohol itself also is part of that bite. When you have a really crispy cold beer, there's a bite there. That's the acids, the bitterness from the hops, and also the alcohol itself. So the colour and the aroma come from the wort, the mash of the yeast and barley, comes from the acids given off in the metabolic process of converting starch to alcohol. Also the part of the bites, the bubbles themselves, and the alcohol there as well. So you've got a lager, which is more of a bottom yeast, which gives you a different crispier beer, and then you've got an ale, which is a top yeast, which gives you a more richer, full-flavoured aromatic beer. So really the bubbles, etc., as well as the byproduct of fermentation.
Okay, you got some yummy stuff that we can sort of taste off with beer. Maybe you can show us what you want to
Yes,
what you
well,
got
I'm
there?
mashing these tapas here. So what I've got here is low carbohydrate principle is a very important principle to drinking to make it healthy. Because like I said before in a previous video, that really you got your starch or sugar metabolized by yeast turning into alcohol. Alcohol's you can look at it as like a narcotic sugar, which has a cerebral effect. Now, so your body can actually have a spike in insulin when you're drinking, and that can explain the crash and the fatigue people get if they drink too much. Okay, so if you have your alcohol with low carb foods and tapas, like this nut mixer made with a smoked paprika, sea salt and olive oil, you just get your nuts there and make your own. You can even put some lemon myrtle on that. Alright, so nuts are great because they're low carb and they're fatty and oily, which helps line your system. Okay, then we've got here, I've got a guacamole and sour cream. So this Mexican goes really well. There's a guacamole on a zucchini biscuit. Now I've got here also mushroom cups as well. So mushroom cups are great because mushrooms are almost the lowest of all carb. So if you put that with a lupin hummus, which is
Actually not bad.
Very good. Well,
From a carnivore.
You've got to have that. I've matched that with a beer here, which is a West Australian beer, which is a new world pale ale. Okay, so it's made with the top yeast, and that gives you that richer colour. You find lagers are mostly lighter colour, so I've matched that with the Mexican. There's one thing I think of with beer. People go, health food chef, what would you match beer with? I instantly think Mexican. It's one of the first things I would go to. I think Mexican, I think Moroccan, maybe Turkish, but Mexican. Now you smell that, you smell the aroma. A lot of that fruitiness, that's actually from the hops. A lot of that.
It's actually very nice.
Yep. And then what you can do is have that with a West Australian ground lupin hummus. Okay. You put that on, and you put that on the mushroom cup. So I've matched the beer. West Australia produces 85% of the world lupin trade, which is ridiculous, and we're only just starting to eat it. It's a superfood. I had a client that feeds lupins to her thoroughbred polo horses, and they're huge and shiny, yet it bypasses humans. So if you actually have a pale ale, goes really well with guacamole, Mexican, capsicum, chilies, chili beans. I try to bypass. Notice something is missing here with the Mexican tapas here. Is corn chips. Would you think? Could you guess why? It'd be a good guess because you've only just learnt it.
Because you got lupin.
Not just because I've got lupin. I have got lupin chips here as well, by the way. No, it's actually corn is a high carbohydrate. You don't want to throw more carbohydrates in your system. Alcohol's already acting like a carbohydrate in many ways. So you want to keep. That's why I'm going mushroom cups, your nuts, avocados, using zucchini as your biscuit. Okay, so just cutting it about 2 mil there. Then you put your tapas on top of that. Your smoked salmon, your cheeses, your feta cheese. Okay, your feta cheese and smoked salmon, that goes really well with a beer. With salty is another principle. I think with beer, smoky, salty, and that's where you're looking at your Mexican. So a bit of beer here. This is actually a high bitter with the hops, high bitter beer. So that's going to actually increase your digestive powers. What happens to people drinking beer? They get very hungry afterwards, and they're off to have their possibly junk food. But if you're having these bitter principles, and I encourage you to look up bitter principles because it's a herbal philosophy. Bitter principles, we'll do a video on alone that dates back thousands of years, even through ancient German, Belgium, and even Czech Republic, where beer actually was invented by the monks in the monasteries. They actually had herbal beers before hops. Flour was used predominantly as your beer flour, the flavour, and you have a little smell of the hops there, Hopfen in German. The monks use rosemary and cinnamon and thyme, and that reminds me.
It smells like wood.
Yeah, it's got this
wood chips.
Yeah, and that's why beer has that beautiful rustic, aromatic, bitter. It's mainly the bitter principles with the aromatic principles. Now another thing is I like to really try and engineer a cinnamon beer. It's not sweet, of course, still bitter, because cinnamon modulates your insulin spike. So no matter what you're drinking or eating, if I had some really carby chips here, my insulin would go through the roof. Okay. Now, if I had cinnamon at the same time, the same chips, my insulin would be modulated, flattened. Okay, and that's helping you. That helps the fall and the crash. So having these another philosophy of mine is, because we're West Australian, born and bred West Australian, I look at using West Australian produce first. West Australian foods, West Australian lupins, West Australian beers as my first port of call, and even wineries. So going low carb is the key principle, staying hydrated. In the last video I talked about staying hydrated, slowing down your drinking rate, appreciating the flavour of the beer. So yeah, you had that beer there. Have another sip of that now. Drinking in moderation and drinking responsibly here. Just have another sip of that beer. And just sort of see if you can get in contact with the bitter principles, the aromatic principles there. But even the sharpness, and then the effect of the bubbles at the end there, that sharpness at the end. Okay? That's when you can now go for your smoked paprika nuts, and you appreciate those flavours. And this is a mature way we're meant to imbibe beer this way, with food and with appreciation of the subtle flavours. Where drinking cheap mass-produced beer from who knows where, and without appreciating it, is tending to the immature side of maybe the abusive side of drinking.
Which is very interesting, because brings out a bit of things to do while you're drinking beer concept.
Yes.
As opposed to what we used to, where we sit around and just talk and drink and eat chips and stuff, all those other things. But
chips.
Yeah, I can get the sense. You know, everyone sort of likes to go sort of healthy these days, but we don't really know how to.
Yeah.
I think that's quite good, the way you brought everything together.
Education's the key.
And it's, I mean, look, you know, I'm one of those guys who actually very simple in terms of what we eat, you know.
Yes.
Dorito chips and stuff like that, but it's actually not bad. I mean,
this is simple.
It's simple, zucchini and the dips, and it's actually quite very manageable.
Avocados from Gidgigana, lupins from WA, mushrooms grown on the local field mushrooms, zucchinis from the local market, beer brewed in Perth. So we're trying to keep as local as possible, and even when you use chips, try and go the lower carb chips. Lower carb the better, because then you're not attributing to the spike and the crash. Also, once again, I like to look into native hops more as a way. Also, I made the lemon water sea salt drink before, where you crush the lemon juice, you pour that lemon juice into the jug, you get a pinch of sea salt, which is lemon juice is electrolytes, and it helps your liver metabolize the alcohol. You get a pinch of sea salt, then you top that up with water and maybe some crushed ice if it's hot, and some chopped lemon. That helps keep your body hydrated and keep your cells nourished as you're drinking. So that's the hydration side. Then we've got the low carb food side. Then we're looking at WA lupins, keep that low carb. Beer plus food, you're winning, okay? Then if you actually, a real bonus is to take the nutrients that help your body make glutathione, which is a liver, hepatoprotective and detox nutrient your body makes, and it makes it out of 3 amino acids: cysteine, glutamate and glycine. So you eat those in your tapas. Make sure that your nuts have got those amino acids in there: cysteine, glutamate and glycine. And it protects your cells from damage from the acetaldehyde, which is a byproduct of liver metabolism.
Okay.
Of alcohol.
All right, Paul, that's fantastic. I guess we could go on forever, but that's a good summary of what we're trying to achieve here, or what you're trying to describe to us. You know, eat and drinking healthy, drinking responsibly, and then eating healthy with beers.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Cheers, no?
Cheers.
Cheers.